episode 87. Today we talk about Sid the Kid, Sidney Crosby, born on 8/7/1987, youngest captain to ever win the Stanley Cup, just became the first player to score multiple goal games against 31 different NHL teams, and Sid is currently on pace to become the first player to record more than a point per game in 20 straight NHL seasons. Beyond MD, episode 87, here we go! Guys, 3 reasons I'm so excited for this episode. First, I just got to talk about Sidney Crosby, my favorite athlete. Second, we're talking about raising money-smart kids, a topic near and dear to my heart. And number 3, I have an exciting announcement to make. So I have decided to run in an election for a council position with the CMPA, the Canadian Medical Protective Association. And here's why. The last 5 years have been an amazing journey for me running this podcast. And I feel like Beyond MD has really helped me discover my purpose. I want to help others, especially my physician colleagues, and I want to help them live richer and more meaningful lives today. On this podcast, I will do everything I can to make sure that that continues to happen. But after giving it some thought, I feel like having the chance to join an organization like the CMPA, this would allow me to have an even bigger impact on my colleagues across the country. I do believe in the CMPA's mission of promoting safe medical care, and I do this on a weekly basis in my position as Director of Radiology Education at my hospital. And I do think that the CMPA, after talking to my colleagues and learning about the organization, I think the CMPA does a terrific job supporting physicians in some of their toughest times. The chance to take part in this would be deeply meaningful for me. I do believe there's a lot that I can bring to council. So over the last 5 years, I've been learning a lot about financial literacy. I have also learned how to ask questions, listen carefully, and gather different perspectives. I believe I can bring all this to council to work effectively with other people and to be a powerful advocate for all of you. So the voting period just started and it will go until April 23rd. I encourage everybody to take some time to vote for their physician leaders. I'm committed to the well-being of my physician colleagues, and I believe I would do a strong job in this role. If you feel the same way, I would be truly grateful for your support. And thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this message. So today I'm delighted to welcome Robin Taub. Robin is a chartered professional accountant by training, and she began her career at KPMG, transitioned into real estate, and then landed in the complex world of derivatives marketing at Citibank Canada. Today, she's a keynote speaker and the award-winning author of The Wisest Investment, an update of the best-selling Parent's Guide to Raising Money-Smart Kids. Robin lives in Toronto, where she and her husband have raised 2 mostly money-smart young adults. For fun, she loves to snowboard, cycle, and go to concerts. She even got backstage once and met Bruce Springsteen. So guys, with that, please enjoy my conversation with Robin Taub. I really had so much fun chatting with her on how to talk to kids about money and how to go about raising money-smart kids. Robin, it's so good to have you on the podcast today. I'll tell you a quick story. So I was driving home yesterday and my son had my phone. He was playing some music and then he saw your name on another podcast. He's like, hey, Dad. He's like, I see Robin Taub on all these podcasts. Aren't you like talking to her tomorrow? So he was excited. It got me really pumped up. So I'm really happy to welcome you here today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me, Yetin. And that's funny. I was just on another podcast from a tutoring company, and I was promoting it a little bit. So maybe that was one of the ones he saw. But as I just said to you before we hit record, I think what you're doing as a doctor, making time for something like this, is really admirable. And I'm looking forward to your perspective on this topic and answering your questions.
Oh, that means so much to me, Robin. I could tell you that over the years, the podcast has just become a part of my fabric, my identity. So there's no way I stop now. And I just find like with each conversation, there's so much to learn. And it's these deep dives that make it so worthwhile. So I really appreciate that. So Robin, we need to hear your story a little bit. You started as an accountant, as a CPA, and now you're a best-selling author and an advocate for raising money-smart kids. So just tell us how this all happened.
Yeah, so I really did start out following a pretty conventional career path as a CPA. I worked in audit at KPMG, and then I moved into tax at EY. And then I went and left to work for one of EY's clients, which is a kind of typical move if you want to get out of public accounting and into industry. But I quickly realized that that accounting in general wasn't for me. And that's why I jokingly say, like, I'm not your typical accountant. I ended up really pivoting in my career and moving into investment banking. And I worked at Citibank on the trading floor for 5 years in derivatives marketing. But I became interested in financial literacy around the time of the global financial crisis. So 2008-9, Canada established a task force on financial literacy, and eventually they created a national strategy. And at the time as well, I had young kids and I was seeking more work-life balance. So I left to become essentially a financial content creator, but no one probably called it that at the time. And one of my very first clients was the OSC, the Ontario Securities Commission. But as far as the book goes, because I am an accountant and I always worked in accounting or finance, I've always felt comfortable around money and financial concepts. And I really do believe that money management is a crucial life skill and one that I wanted to pass on to my own two kids. So when they were young, I started to talk to them about money, to invest in their financial education, and to teach them the basics. And now my kids are in their 20s, and I like to joke around that they are responsible, independent, and mostly money smart.
I was going to say, are they money smart? Yeah, I bet you they are.
Yeah, everyone wants to know that. Yeah, they are. I mean, I say mostly because, no one's perfect, but they are good with money. They do. My daughter's a financial professional. My son works in audio. Like he's an audio sound engineer, but he runs his own business. So he's also pretty solid with the financial side of that. And, for a lot of parents, though, this topic is overwhelming and just they don't know how to go about it and what information to share with kids of different ages. So that's what inspired me to write the book, The Wisest Investment, and why I continue to talk about this and spread the word on podcasts like this. So that's the story. That's how I went from accountant to author.
That's a really cool story. Thank you for sharing. And with your kids, it sounds like they have some interesting career paths. And it just made me think back to this weekend. I was playing the game of life with my youngest. I know you mentioned that game in your book as well. And so he took the career path and he ended up being like a video blogger in the game. I took the college path. I was like a politician and he just crushed me. Like he just crushed me. And I was just like, oh my God. So there you go. But,
video blogger is now a career in the game of life. So they've really updated it.
It is. He was a video blogger. Then he was an app specialist and he just destroyed me. Okay.
Yeah. I think our generation, everyone was like, you have to go to university. You have to have a traditional career as a lawyer, an accountant, a doctor. Such a different world now.
It really, really is. And I think that sometimes the first exposure or the conversation we have around money with our kids is kids are young. They'll maybe talk to somebody at school. Then they'll come home and they'll say, hey, Dad, how much money do we have? Are we rich? And I honestly, I still find those questions really hard to navigate. So sometimes that's the door that opens into all this. So how should we be navigating questions like that when our kids ask us?
Well, you're not alone, Yatin. It's very common for parents to be concerned that they're going to get these types of uncomfortable questions like, are we rich or are we poor? Or how much money do you make? Or do we have a mortgage? How much is it? And that's one of the reasons that parents avoid talking to their kids about money, which really does them a disservice. So what I advise parents is try to answer these questions as honestly and as sensitively as you can, because they are really great opportunities for age-appropriate money conversations and even teachable moments. I think the first thing you might want to ask your kid is like, hey, why are you asking me that? Like, what brought that up? What's going on? So the second tip is you don't have to get into specific numbers. You do not have to share your T4 or your salary or your net worth or those things. But you can explain like your philosophy that maybe making or having a lot of money doesn't guarantee financial success, and that comes from making sound financial decisions with what you make or have. And you can talk about the importance of having good financial habits, like paying yourself first or setting goals or budgeting. And then lastly, you can talk about what does being rich mean to them? What does it mean to you? And that points out that it can mean different things. It's not always about the money. It's not the only measure to a lot of people. It can include having, a loving, supportive family, having good health. As a doctor, you for sure would agree with that. And, having opportunities to learn and grow throughout your life. So being rich is a perspective, and it isn't always just about a financial accounting.
Totally. And I tell the kids now that, a truly rich life is about crafting a life where you have time freedom, where you're able to do the things you want to do with the people you love. And of course, money is the enabler to that.
Yes.
So we try to have conversations in that realm. So
are your kids a bit older? Like they seem like maybe they're not young kids, I'm guessing, from what you're
describing. Turning 8 and 11 this year. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, those are really great ages, like sort of pre-teens, where they're not young kids anymore. So they can grasp some of these more philosophical or sophisticated issues. And it's great that you're having these conversations with them at this stage.
These are the golden years, Robin. They're such wonderful years. Now,
I know.
One of the things
it goes fast.
I find, it goes by so fast, right?
Yeah.
I am finding that certain money conversations, we're going to get to the allowance system a little bit later on, but I find sometimes this stuff is not really sticking because they're not really seeing as much cash anymore. We are in a near cashless society. So with this in mind, do you think that piggy banks are still a good idea, or it kind of strays too far from reality now? What's your take on it?
I think that for young kids, and by that I mean under 8, I still think cash and a piggy bank, and I wish I could show you, I have a multi-slotted piggy bank in my home office in Toronto, and I'm not there, but using bills and coins and a multi-slotted piggy bank, which has a slot for save, spend, share, and invest, I still think that's a great starting point, because bills and coins are tangible and they're tactile, and you can play counting games with them, and you can teach them math lessons and history lessons with our Canadian money. So it's a great place to start because it's engaging for kids. And I think you just want to keep their interest and not bore them and meet them where they're at. And they're too young to understand conceptual things like digital money or tapping to pay. It's just a little too beyond where they're at. So I would say with young kids, definitely still start with cash. I know we don't often have it on us anymore. It's so rare that you use it, and many places aren't even taking it anymore. But I still think it's a great beginning for a young child to start their money lessons with.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I can tell you that both my boys, I've talked to them about this. They want a piggy bank. I was talking to my wife about it. I know you talked about that multi-slot piggy bank in your book. And then she came up with the idea. She's like, why don't we get them like these accordion folders for those different compartments, and they can like stuff cash into it. So that's what we're going to do this week. But on kind of the digital payments, something really nice happened on the weekend. My oldest, who's 10, turning 11 this year, he invited me to a coffee date at Starbucks this weekend. He said, Dad, I just want to spend time with you, and I just want to talk.
This kid is so sophisticated. I love it.
I was just like, I love it. And, he was a little bit nervous to bring it out. And then my wife was just like, buddy, don't be nervous. Like, you know what the reaction is going to be. I was so excited, Robin. So we went to Starbucks, just me and him. We sat for an hour. We talked. It was amazing. And then he wanted to go get a snack. And then my Starbucks card was out of cash, basically. And then he's like, he's like, there's only like $1 there. So he's like, I guess I can't get anything today. And I was like, hold on, let's try to make this a teachable moment. And then I was just like, okay. I was like, let me show you how easy it is to spend today. I put my thumb on the biometric tab, and then boom, I just picked a credit card and just loaded $25 there. It went to $26. And he's like, what? That's it? I was like, yeah. I was like, you actually have to be careful now because it's too easy to spend money and you can't get carried away like this. But he went and got his snack, but that was a moment in itself. But it was a good day.
That's a great teachable moment. And he's old enough to understand, the concept of transferring money online or digitally. But even that like blows me away that you can do it with your thumb. But
I know.
Just going back to one thing you said about the envelope system. I actually use that envelope system for my tax stuff still, because
I
anything
do
I get
too.
that's still paper slip.
Yeah,
But
me too.
yeah. So, but that was a trend maybe a year or so ago, cash stuffing. So people were going back to the idea of using cash to help them budget and control their spending. And they were setting up within an accordion folder like that, different slots or envelopes to stuff cash into for either saving categories or spending categories. So that's still that is something that people are doing. You could use jars. There's a lot of ways to do it with cash. It's just a lot of places don't accept it. So it becomes a little tricky.
I know, I know. Now, there's going to be a lot of parents out there, Robin, who I think don't really feel qualified to talk to their kids about money. But sometimes I think we make money a little bit too complicated. And if I break it down into its basics, I think that good money habits start with a good value system. Like, I think one of the most powerful things is to teach our kids sometimes to wait, to teach them about delayed gratification. And maybe you can just talk to us about this and address this, because some parents don't feel qualified, but I would argue
Yeah.
we all have the ability to keep it simple and impart these values. What do you think?
Yeah. So let's talk about why parents don't talk to their kids about money. We already touched on one reason, which is they're afraid they're going to get uncomfortable questions that they don't know how to answer. But research also shows that parents feel like they don't have the time or the knowledge to teach their kids about money. And there was a study that was done like early on when I started doing this work that found that 78% of parents had tried to teach their kids about money, but 2/3 didn't feel they'd been successful at it, and more than half didn't know what information they needed. And that, again, was really what was behind me wanting to create this book as a resource. So I agree with you that we can overthink it. We can make money overly complicated, but because it really does boil down to what I like to call the 5 pillars of money, which are earn. First, you have to earn money before you have any choice as to what to do with it. But once you earn it, you have 4 choices. You can either save it, spend it, share it, or invest it, just like that multi-slotted piggy bank makes clear to young kids. So even as you get older, it's the same 5 pillars: earn, save, spend, share, and invest. So it's not complicated. It's actually in a way simple, but it's not easy. Because once you get into all the nuances at each different age and stage within those 5 pillars, there is still a lot to learn. And a lot of parents feel overwhelmed by it. But you brought up a really good strategy. I'll call it a strategy, which is using your values. So, parents that feel like they're really busy and they don't have the time to teach their kids about money. We talked about looking for teachable moments like you did at Starbucks. But another really great strategy for parents is to use your values. And by that, I mean the things in life that are most important to you, to help guide and prioritize financial decisions and set meaningful goals. And to talk to your kids about your values and discover what they are. And I created a tool you probably saw in the book called the Values Validator to help parents do that. Your kids can use the tool as well. And to really be mindful of your values and to try and align your spending with those values. It just creates this framework to make things a little more manageable, because money's finite. We have to make trade-offs and prioritize. And if you're looking for the criteria for that, I think your values are a really solid way to do that.
I think that's great, Robin. I did the values validator exercise. So my top values in your book, this was really well done, I have to say.
Thank you.
Achievement. Yeah. Achievement, adventure, enjoyment, health, independence. That's what I came up with for myself. But so
you might have to get your 11-year-old to do.
I think so.
See what his are. Or your partner as well, because ideally there's a lot of overlap, in a family, so that you're on the same page as your spouse or partner. And then most parents want their children to share their values, and you end up passing along money, hopefully one day, but you also want to make sure you pass down your values so that that you've taught them well, because you're not going to be around forever, and you want them to make good decisions that are in line with these family values. So you also talked about habits and the marshmallow test. So should we talk a bit
Yeah.
about that? Do you want to tell your listeners about it?
I want to really unpack. The marshmallow test was so incredible. So, Robin, I can't remember how old the kids were in the experiment. They were
Really
maybe
young, like
four, right?
three or four.
Three, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah. And so basically they did a test. They told these kids, the experimenters said, you can take one marshmallow now, but if you wait a certain amount of time, and it wasn't a very long time, I think it was under 10 minutes. If you
Yes.
wait that long, then you can have 2 marshmallows. And the kids who were able to wait, resist that initial temptation, they followed them later in life. And I dug into this even a little bit further with the research. And when these people entered their 30s and 40s, they were actually studying them again. And Robin, it turns out that the people who were able to wait and hold off on the marshmallows, they were less impulsive later in life. They had a lower BMI. They had higher education. It was wild. It was just unbelievable. So
I know I write about this in the book because it aligns with my one of the habits that I encourage parents to adopt, which is, as you said, teaching delayed gratification and setting goals, because setting goals is a way to manifest that delayed gratification. And yeah, the waiters, the kids that were able to wait for that marshmallow, they coped better and were more socially competent, self-assertive, trustworthy, dependable, and academically successful. So, it's about willpower and impulse control. And that is such an important life skill in a world that stresses instant gratification and consumption.
do you have any tips on how we can cultivate this value within our kids? Like I've tried to do the marshmallow test at home. And they, fortunately, they passed when they were young, which was a good sign to see. But
yes,
what are other ways in which we can promote this value?
Yeah, so goal setting is a great way, and you can even do it with kids like your kids' ages. Are you familiar with the SMART goals framework? With that acronym?
Yeah, I am. I think you may have touched on this in the book too. Yeah.
Yes, I also do talk about in the book, because SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable or attainable, realistic, and time framed. So the more a goal can be a SMART goal, so you get really clear around what it is and what you have to do to achieve it, the greater the likelihood of success. And tying that goal back to the values that you discover doing the values validator makes that goal more meaningful and compelling. So I think with kids, teaching them delayed gratification through goal setting for something that they really want, that's important to them. Like, I don't know, what are your boys into? Is it like video games or sneakers or like Starbucks cards?
You know what? My oldest is really into sports. He loves soccer, basketball, and skiing. And then my younger one is really into building things with his hands. I actually brought out my old Meccano set, and he was like tearing that apart. So he loves to build. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe your younger one, like maybe he's into Meccano or Lego. Like I actually love Lego, adult Lego. So if that's something, and those Lego sets, for example, can be pretty expensive, like at least like $80 even at Walmart. So if let's say your younger child wanted to save up for that, getting really specific about, which set he wants, how much it costs, based on his allowance, how long would it take him, if he were able to save maybe half of his allowance each week to get that goal, what period of time would that be over? And like, are you willing to match that? Whatever he saves, are you willing to match it equally in order to help him get there faster? So I think there's a lot of really great ways to get them to spend their own money. And I know we're going to talk about allowance and stuff like that, but to force them to make the choices with money so that they understand that, it doesn't just fall out of the sky, that you have to save for things that you want, and that most people can't just afford to buy everything they want the minute they see it.
Yeah. Well, maybe let's get into that allowance system, Robin, because my friend a couple of years ago, he encouraged me to start one basically for household chores, doing them consistently. You will get your age in dollars per week. And then for anything beyond, and I kind of like how you laid it out in the book, that if kids do extra things that you would pay somebody else for, I think there was like a parent story or a parent quote, then you can give them something additional. So my kids this year have been willing to help me clean the snow, clean the driveway, that type of thing. But one thing is, because we're not actually handing over cash, like sometimes I tell them, hey guys, I'm going to transfer some money into your account. Maybe it's your RESP. It's just not sticking. And I think maybe we just need to bring cash into the picture, but just some general allowance system guidance here would be really appreciated.
Yeah, well, you just answered one of my questions. I was wondering why it wasn't sticking. And my guess was because you often don't have cash on hand, which I think is very typical. Sometimes you forget as a parent. I know I did. But the reason allowance is so important is because it gives your child an opportunity to manage money, to get some experience making those choices that I talked about under the 5 pillars. Like they're, quote, earning their allowance, whether it's for chores or not, we can talk about that, but they're earning some money, and then they're going to feel like it's their money. Even though you're giving it to them as allowance, they're going to take more ownership over it, and they're going to feel more accountable for how they spend it. Because kids will find it really easy to spend your money. It just doesn't count when it's someone else's. But when it's their own, whether it's birthday money or holiday money or allowance, they're going to think longer and harder about something and whether they really want it or not, or whether they can walk away. So I also think that an allowance and making those choices gives kids the opportunity to make mistakes, to make some bad decisions when the stakes are low. And it also reinforces this message that money is a finite resource. And once you've chosen to spend it in a certain way, like let's say at Starbucks on a couple of drinks, that money is no longer going to be in your Starbucks account. It's gone. So it forces you to live with the consequences of your decisions.
I think so. There's going to be no more reloading that Starbucks app, right? Like on the same sitting. Yeah.
But as far as so just if you remind yourself that it's an important experience for your child to have to get an allowance and manage it, you might remember to do it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it digitally, especially if your 11-year-old, your older child has opened a youth account at the bank and they have a debit card, because they're probably going to be spending a lot of their money digitally too. So maybe you just set it up every week as if you've set them up as a payee at the bank, perhaps you can do it that way, or through Interac, and just have it go each week. And you just have to, the key is to sit down and discuss the system with them and say, like, I'm not giving you cash anymore. It's going to your account directly, but I want you to know every Sunday night or Monday morning, you're going to see that amount in your bank account, and you're going to be able to use it. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of bank accounts, at what age is it a good time to maybe consider opening one for them?
I'd say any time between 9 to 12 years old, like that preteen stage. Check with your bank, but I think every bank in Canada offers a youth account, which is a special account for young savers with no fees. Not much interest will be earned, but that's okay. It gives them an opportunity to use the debit card, to withdraw cash if they need it at the ATM, just to have their own account that they can go online and look at, or look at on their phone. They can use the mobile banking app, which I'm sure they'll be very good at, and they're very intuitive with these things. And so I would say, by 12, I think it's most likely most kids will have opened a youth account.
Let's talk about teachable moments. I know we talked about one at Starbucks, and ironically, Robin, one of the things that my son most wanted to tell me at Starbucks, he was kind of giving me some feedback, and he said, "Dad, you're too wise. You turn too many moments into teachable moments. You need to take your foot off the gas a little bit." Like, that's what he wanted to tell me.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
you know what?
Adorable, though.
So I know it's pretty cute, but here's the thing. So growing up, and this is how I explained it to them. Guys, I told my kids, growing up, I unfortunately was not an avid reader. I was studious, but I didn't read for pleasure a lot. Now I read a ton, and I feel like I'm just catching up for all this lost time. And I just have this information just oozing out of me that I want to share. So I was just like, guys, I appreciate it. Like, I need to ease up a little bit. But he told me, he's like, "Dad, too many teachable moments." So I need to find my balance. God. But
that's so fun. I've never heard a parent, you're the first parent, Yatin, that has ever told me that their child told them that they've had too many teachable moments. Most parents don't take the time because it's a little more work to stop what you're doing to explain
Yeah.
something. I think it's well worth it, but okay, maybe ease off a little, but don't ease off on the money teachable moments.
Yeah, let's talk about those. What do you think are the most worthwhile ones for us to think about?
Well, go again. I bring everything back to the 5 pillars of money. There's going to be teachable moments for all 5. Again, I'll repeat: earn, save, spend, share, and invest. And they're going to be a little bit different depending on your child's age and what stage they're at. But the idea is just think about how you go about your day-to-day lives. You're always interacting with money. We're always spending it, maybe not in cash, as we said, but you're still interacting financially, whether you're going to the grocery store and paying with your phone or your debit or credit card, whether you're shopping online, buying tickets to something, or ordering stuff from Amazon, whether you're paying your utility bills, your mortgage. Like, it's just everywhere you look, you can see something that you've spent money on or that has a financial side to it. And it's just a question of like talking about it with your kid, explaining it, or if they ask you about something, just taking a few minutes to describe what you're doing. I think grocery shopping is a classic example because young kids come with you often for that. So you can talk about comparison shopping, making choices within a budget, needs versus wants, like what you absolutely need in terms of like healthy food to make meals versus like some of the funner snacks and things like that. But other examples would include planning a birthday party or a family trip or a family outing, like an excursion. That even lets you talk about what makes you happy when you spend money, whether it's experiences or stuff. Hint, it's usually experiences.
Yeah.
But like even doing your taxes, like this time of year, people are starting to get ready to do their taxes, to file by the end of April. So that's even a teachable moment.
I love it. I was thinking, I'm glad you mentioned traveling and creating trips and maybe getting the kids involved there, because we as a family, we do love to travel. The kids love to travel. So I think the next time I have to book something, I'll maybe just get their help in that. And then we can look up some prices and we can talk about what we think is reasonable and just really help that understanding sink in that, whoa, you're booking a hotel somewhere and it can easily be $400 or $500 a night. And just to understand the cost, right? So I think I'll maybe try that next time. Are you also a fan of budgeting for kids? Because I think there are people out there who will say that if you force yourself to basically track your spending or you give yourself a set amount to spend, then it will modify behavior. A lot of us don't put in the effort to do that. I can't really say I'm a budgeter myself, but I would say that with anything, like even in my medical training, when somebody was watching me, I would be very attentive to the task. Like when my staff were watching me. So it's like an app that's tracking you. I think it could be a good idea. What's your take?
I'd say a good analogy for people is like a food diary. Like if you're trying to lose weight, and maybe, I don't know if you've had this with patients that are trying to lose weight, and you recommend that they track their macros, they keep track of what they're eating. And, it's always the little things. It's like the things on the margin that you're not really aware. Like I just grabbed a handful of like chocolate covered pistachio nuts before this interview. And I'm like, maybe not the best snack, but they were delicious. But just, if you write down what you're eating, you can kind of see how the calories might add up. And maybe you are eating just too many calories, not enough protein, that type of thing. It's really similar. So I am a big fan of tracking your spending because the numbers don't lie. As an accountant, I can assure you, the numbers do not lie. And how you think you're spending your money may actually be very different from how you're actually spending it. And you won't know until you look at it. Now, a lot of people don't want to look at it, but it really is a good wake-up call. And it allows you to look for the low-hanging fruit, like the wasteful spending or the unnecessary spending or the little indulgences that can add up that aren't maybe aligned with your values or really worth it in the long run. So it helps you find those things. And I think, 10 years ago it was a little more cumbersome to have to track your spending. But now, in Canada at least, all of the big banks have tracking and budgeting tools built into mobile banking. It makes it really easy. Like it learns the vendors that you use and it can categorize your spending for you. And then you can use that actual information to build budgets and set alerts and notifications. So it's become a lot easier. Like I would tell most people just start by looking at what your mobile banking app offers. Start with that and see if it's robust enough for you and if it provides the information that you're looking for to help you manage your money better.
Yeah, I don't use my debit card so much, so I probably haven't benefited from their spending apps there. But do you recommend any external apps too for people who are just using credit cards or things like that?
Well, your mobile banking app will track your credit cards too. It's not just debit spending. There's eligible accounts, so it might not be all your credit cards. Like I'm at TD and I have a Canadian and a US card. I don't think it tracked my US card, but it definitely tracked my Canadian credit card and my debit. So yeah, it works for people that spend digitally. It's not going to be great if you use a lot of cash, which we've established you're not. You'd have to track that manually. Other tools I've heard, like people really do like You Need a Budget, YNAB. You mentioned it as well when we were planning the episode. So that's one that I hear good things about. I mean, a popular one that it's interesting that people used to really like, I used it when it first came out, was Mint, which was an Intuit product, and it was always free. And they shut it down at the end of 2024.
Oh, really?
They're not supporting it anymore. They've rolled it into their credit score app. So I would say, you can still use a spreadsheet. You can download your banking information to an Excel spreadsheet. And again, that really forces you. You're looking at every line item and you're categorizing it yourself. Whereas with the mobile banking app, you're more like correcting it. Like it gets to know your vendors and it does a pretty good job. So you're just kind of reviewing it and correcting it. So you're not doing as much work. You could argue, the more work you have to do, the more aware you become of your spending. But I still say like most people don't want to spend a lot of time on this, or you could just focus on your like problem areas. Like let's say, as a family, you're both busy. You tend to rely on Uber Eats or going out for dinner or fast food or something like on the nights where you're too busy. Yeah. And that can really add up right now, especially with food inflation and everything. So if you know that you have those problem areas, you could just kind of focus on those and really try to stick to a budget for those items, for the discretionary items.
Now, when it comes to kids and work and them getting their first job, I think that there's a lot to learn from working. I unfortunately didn't get my first job until, it was first year undergrad. Like I didn't work in high school. And I think I could have learned a lot. I could have learned a lot having gotten a job earlier. What do you think for kids? Like when should they consider getting their first job?
I have to admit, I'm like you. I didn't, I think I was like a swimming teacher and I babysat, but I didn't have I have friends that like worked in retail from the, like grade 11, 12, like always.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was also very studious and I think I was like spending a lot of time studying. And I agree though that there were lessons that I missed out on because I didn't work until after my first or second year of university. I think some of those lessons are around time management. So when you have a part-time job as a kid and you're in school and you want to get good marks to go on post-secondary, you have to really be good at juggling things and good at managing your time. I think it teaches you great interpersonal skills or soft skills. You have coworkers, you have a boss, you have customers, depending on what job you're doing. So I think it teaches a lot about soft skills. And then there's the money lessons. So, this summer, I saw these kids working at their grandmother's popcorn stand at a farmer's market.
Love that. Yeah.
And it was so cute. One week it was the brother, one week it was the sister. And, I could see they were so good with the customers and getting people to do free samples. And they knew how to take the money and make change. And they were involved in some of the marketing. I could see how much they were learning from it. I wrote about it in one of my Substack articles. And I just think and then they're also earning their own money. So we talked about earning it from an allowance, but here they're standing at a farmer's market for like a whole day, So they're really making that connection between hard work, being on your feet all day, talking to people, and earning money. And I think that then you have the opportunity, if they're asking for something or they want to buy something or save for something, you can say like, how many hours of work would it take for you to earn that? And just think about whether that's worth it to you. Like, it's a straight math equation, maybe it's 5 hours, maybe it's 3. Like is that how you want to spend your time and money? Like nothing's going to teach them the value of a dollar, like putting in a hard day's work, making their own money, and then having to part with it.
I totally agree with that. About a month ago, there were a few high school students who were cleaning driveways. Usually I love to be outside and do it. And I told them at first, I was like, guys, I'm going to do this myself. But then I was just like, oh, you know what? I have such a busy day ahead of me. And I told them, I was like, guys, if you're free, I'll let you do it this time. And then they could, right away, we negotiated a rate. So they had to do that. Yeah. And then we were away in Mexico during the snowstorm. And there were like 2 feet of snow that came down. And then thank goodness I had their contact information, because they were cleaning our driveway, sending me pictures. And I was just so grateful that I didn't have to come back at like 1 a.m. to like 2 feet of snow. So
that's amazing. Wait, how old were they?
They were, I would say 17. They were 17.
I would guess.
They were 2. Yeah. Yeah. And they would just
that's a great example.
Yeah, I think it's a great job, right? And even the example that you mentioned of your friends or who were babysitting, like it's capital light. It doesn't require much. You just kind of show up, put in your time. But these guys really saved with the snow cleaning. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I think I love seeing like kids that are kind of entrepreneurial like that. They see like it's dumped and they're just like out there with their parents' shovels or whatever. But, other things kids do, like I said, I was like a swimming teacher, but like, sports related, like refereeing sports. I know like young kids can do that for younger kids. So like 14 or 15-year-old can be a ref and maybe get paid for that. Or being a camp counselor is pretty common too.
That seems like an awesome job. I would want to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a fun job. You make a bit of money, but you do also learn a lot about people and
absolutely. And you know what? These kids who clean my driveway, there was one snowfall that was particularly heavy, and then they were wise enough to negotiate. They said, there was so much snow today. Like, would you be comfortable with this? They were asking so nicely, like, for sure, I'm going to help them out. But again, negotiation skills too. So
yeah, what a great skill to learn. Younger.
Robin, I got to ask you about social media, because I mean, social media messes with me. So I can only think about like how it can mess with a kid who doesn't really know any better. Like, I think social media, if we're not careful, it can promote buying things, consuming things. It can promote a lot of comparison, and then people can feel entitled, like, okay, well, this person had a massive birthday party. Like, birthday parties are becoming out of control in my mind. Like, back in the day, we would be in the basement just playing like Pin the Donkey, and now it's like you rent out a whole like indoor soccer facility, and everything is over $1,000. And I find birthday parties are just getting a bit much now. But how do you talk to kids now to help them kind of navigate social media, deal with all its influences, and just live a meaningful life along the way? I'm worried about it. Our kids don't have cell phones yet. The day will come, but I'm looking for any tips here. Okay,
I'm going to answer it, but I also just thought of that birthday party example that you gave, where like people are doing like indoor golf driving ranges and soccer field. That's another great teachable moment. Again, the budget, like what would that cost? How many kids are you inviting? Is it per kid? Is it, like how did that compare to like just taking like a few close friends to a movie? Like, I don't know, there's just really great lessons in there for planning an experience like that. And then I was also going to mention there's a website called echoage.com, which I don't know if you've come across it with your kids or any of their friends, but a lot of parents use it on the gift side, because again, if you have a big party and they get all these gifts that they don't really even need. So it's a way to send out the invitations, manage RSVPs, but also they collect money, and you and your child can decide on a charity that is meaningful to the child who's having the party, and half the money goes towards that. So that's like the share pillar. And then half the money goes to like one big gift that the kid wants. So it's just a really cool tool that parents because this whole birthday party thing has become an arms race and it's gotten a little bit out of control. So just a couple of good tools and teachable moments around that.
I love that. I mean, hopefully I didn't sound too harsh in the birthday parties. Like, I hope I'm not the only one who thinks they're getting a bit out of hand, but I like that advice.
I've seen some TV shows. I mean, I think it took place in LA, but I've read about it is insane what goes on sometimes for kids' birthday parties. Anyways, going back to social media.
Yeah, please.
So yes. So you're talking about like the whole compare and despair. So like the scrolling, and it's like you said, it's hard enough for adults to experience it. And then that your kids are also going online and seeing their friends highlight reels and living their best life online. And they can have FOMO, and just it is really hard because preteens and teens, they do experience peer pressure, and they do care about what their friends say. And in fact, by 12, most kids will side with their friends over their parents when it comes to purchasing decisions. And then on social media, in addition to being able to see all this stuff and feeling like less than, there's social commerce is now frictionless. So there's so many opportunities to buy things within these apps. And again, I think it goes back to values. Like without strong sense of values, family values, status and materialism will have so much more power over our kids because of all these media messages and stressing instant gratification and consumption. So we do as parents want to be generous with our kids, but we don't want to spoil them. So I think there's a few things as parents that we can do to combat this. So one is to talk to them about the difference between needs and wants. So we touched on that a little bit earlier with the grocery shopping, but more broadly, like needs are the must-haves for survival, a roof over their head, nutritious food to eat, and basic clothes to wear. And wants are like the nice to haves, like going on vacations, going to concerts, eating out, that kind of thing. And so just a reminder again that, once our needs are satisfied, there may be money left over for wants, but often in life you have to make trade-offs and prioritize. The second tip is, unless you already have one, then you can remind your kids to get a job. Like we were just saying, either an odd job or a part-time job to help pay for some of the things that they're asking for. Because as I said, it bears repeating that they'll find it really easy to spend your money, but much harder to spend money that they consider their own. If it's an allowance, sure, but if they've worked hard for it, even more, they'll feel that even more strongly. A third idea is to do some kind of a volunteer project as a family, just to introduce the share pillar and family philanthropy as a way to open your kids' eyes up to the fact that not everybody lives the way that they do, and to teach them to be compassionate and put things in perspective, and appreciate what they have. And then the fourth tip is related to that, which I say as parents, try to model an attitude of gratitude. Gratitude doesn't always come naturally, and it takes practice until it becomes habit. So, it's really important to show your kids that you appreciate what you have and that you're grateful. And you can encourage something like a gratitude journal or some kind of a gratitude practice that you share openly around the dinner table. So those are just some ideas. I don't know if you've done any of that with your kids.
You know what? We do take moments to talk about one thing from time to time, like specific thing that we are grateful for. Somebody told me that they use this concept of a gratitude jar, and they left it somewhere in the house where everybody would walk by. And the goal was for everybody from time to time to write on a piece of paper something that they're grateful for, drop it in the jar. And then Christmas time comes, or whatever holiday you celebrate, and open up the jar and read those things out loud to really help all that sink in. I thought it was a wonderful idea.
That's a great idea.
I really want to pull the trigger on it. Speaking of gratitude, I'll have to say, I'll talk about my oldest, Rohan, who's 10 going 11. I'll speak about him proudly here. But when he was turning 10, we did one of those indoor soccer parties. And then we talked to him. I was just like, Rohan, you're fortunate to be able to play soccer. You're healthy. We have the ability to invite your friends over and have everybody take part in this amazing experience. Not all kids are this fortunate. So what do you think about maybe, I asked him first, I was like, what would you value more? Having an amazing day with your friends or the presents that come afterward? He picked his friends. And I said, well, okay, this year, instead of presents, how about we get your friends to contribute to a charity of your choice? And he was just like, totally, let's do it. And so he sent, instead of getting any birthday gifts, it all went to charity. And then he got a letter from that charity in the mail saying like, Rohan, thank you. Thank you for giving up something on your day to make things possible for so many other children. Like, it was a really nice moment,
I'm curious what kind of charity he chose and how he chose it.
So this is a charity that I had been researching for some time. I had been involved in, and it was a charity tied to allowing kids to have opportunity for sports and recreation. So the charity we picked was Jumpstart. And
okay,
because,
great.
Rohan is just so physically active and so into sports. And I think that was one that just resonated with his interests. So we made it happen that way. But it was a great moment. And I think something that we try and do again, at least with our youngest, at least once.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's a great story. Very encouraging.
So last question, Robin. I have this dream that when the kids are maybe 13 or 14, I'm going to take them back to Starbucks with like my stack of my favorite books. And I'm going to give them these books, and then I'm going to talk to them about compound interest. But the moment you mention like compound interest to the average person, like, it's a real buzzkill. Like, these are not exciting words at all. And I'm just like, how do you make investing and compounding exciting to a child who is potentially getting to that stage where they're ready to take those steps? How do you make this exciting?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is show them the money.
Yeah.
So as you know, there's tons of good online compound interest calculators out there. One that just comes to mind because I've worked with them is the Ontario Securities Commission. So if you just Google it, you'll find it. It's on their Get Smarter About Money website. So let's say you sat down with your boys and you show, at the computer, and you put in an example. So saving just $10 a month, which doesn't seem like too much. It seems like $10 a month, 30 years at 3% interest. You could change those parameters, but let's just use that as an example. You can show them that adds up to almost $6,000, with over $2,200 of that being interest because of compounding. So you can play around, if they were to only do $5, what would it be? If they could make it 10, if they could do $5 a week instead of $10 a month, what would that do if it wasn't 30 years, but it was 50, if interest rates were higher or lower? I think playing around with a calculator like that, and, it will produce a graph and it will show you graphically how much you put in versus how much interest you earned. And I have a little chart like that in my book comparing simple and compound interest. So just the visuals over a long time horizon, because that's what kids have going for them when it comes to compounding. They have time on their side to take advantage of that, and the growth becomes exponential. So getting them interested in investing and compounding early in life is great. They might learn about it a bit in school, but they may not learn it in the context of making money or saving money and seeing it growing your wealth. So I think you show them the money and they'll be interested.
I'm going to give that another shot. I've played around with that calculator with them before, but I think when they're motivated and ready to learn, I'm going to pull it out again. Robin, this has been so nice. I want to make sure that people also know, where can they learn more about you and follow what you're up to? So you can, if you're interested, please visit my website. It's robintaub.com, and that's Robin with an I, TAUB.com. And there I share information about my book, which is called The Wisest Investment, Teaching Your Kids to Be Responsible, Independent, and Money Smart for Life. And there's links to purchase it. And I also share information
about events where I'm speaking, as well as additional resources that I recommend, other books, courses, anything to do with money. And I also have a Substack, which is like a newsletter that I try to write monthly. And there's a sign up for that as well if you just want to stay up to date with what's going on. The most recent newsletter was about tariffs. Like, what are they, and how do you explain them to your kids if they're asking you? They keep hearing about tariffs. What exactly are there, and how does that compare to like sales tax or other things that they may hear about? So those are the main ways. robintaub.com, thewisestinvestment.com is also a website I have for the book.
Robin, I have to say, I think you are providing a really valuable service to people. Like,
thank you.
Educating parents on how to talk to kids about money. Like, nobody talked to me about money when I was growing up. It's such a significant need, and I think you're doing great things to help people in this space. So wishing you like ongoing success.
Thank you.
I think wishing you all the best.
Thanks, Yatin. I really appreciate you inviting me on and having a chance to tell your audience about making the wisest investment. And I wish everybody the best of luck with this, with their own families.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robin. Okay, have a great one.
My pleasure.
So links to all of Robin's work, her book, her website, everything is in the show notes, so feel free to check that out. And I'm happy to say that since we recorded the episode, we did go ahead and get those accordion-style file folders for the kids to store their money. And Rohin right away divided it up into save, spend, invest, and donate. So I was proud of him for that. And one of the next things we need to do is go ahead and get that gratitude jar. That's something we want to do this week, get it ready for the holidays at the end of the year. So guys, I would love to hear from you in terms of the things that you are sharing with your kids and the practices that you feel go a long way. We're all in this together. Thank you as always for joining. If you're getting value out of Beyond MD, feel free to share with your network. And until next time, stay well, stay savvy. We'll see you in 2 weeks.